I don't have a gavel, so my water jug hereby is designated as a gavel. Let's start the meeting of the Charter Review Committee right now. I gather the mayor is on the phone
Yes.
and he can hear us.
Can you hear Mayor Manto? Can you hear Mr. Sofer?
Very clearly.
Can you hear Mr.
Yeah, I
Sofer?
couldn't hear anyone else. Like, it was very echoey, so you're very clear, Patty.
Okay.
Maybe move the
Hold on one second, okay?
Okay.
Put the phone on. Really, that 6-foot
Yeah.
distance includes speakerphones.
So it's a little louder.
Too close to it
Is
now.
the city attorney going to attend, or has he already passed judgment?
No, what he wants, you know, you've got to select your finals, and then he will take the language and modify it as need be by law.
Okay, 'cause I was under the false impression he was supposed to get with me like a week ago.
Yeah. And he, when I talked to him, so we'll have a sign.
Okay. Basically, I think we've all come to, unless there's some changes
Mr.
that's
Sofer,
in
can I
the notes
interrupt?
that Mike has put together for us.
Can I interrupt 1 second? Want to start with a roll call?
Absolutely. But can't the mayor see everybody?
He's over there now. He moved.
Oh, he moved? Okay.
Okay. Vice Mayor Glenn Gunn,
Here.
Councilmember Dave Gaddis,
Here.
Councilmember Mark Bean,
Here,
Mayor Joseph Manzo,
Here on the telephone.
Mr. Stanley Sofer,
Here.
Mr. Michael Zabel.
here,
And Councilmember Rob Menaki is not present, and Councilmember Jody Shirley is not present.
So roll call is completed. Do we need to make a motion to accept the minutes of the previous meeting? So moved.
second.
Motion made and seconded to accept it's the March 5th minutes.
Correct. Correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Minutes are accepted. Okay, we're into our meeting right now. I think Patty's, Captain's done a really good job of putting this together. I looked through it, I didn't see any errors or changes. Obviously, we have some questions on a couple of different items. Who would like to start? I believe you had a question. You sent out an email on one item.
I did, actually I have two. One is by the resolution that the prior council adopted regarding the strategic plan. The strategic plan is supposed to be incorporated into the charter to institutionalize the process.
When was that, but the ordinance was fully effective to do the strategic plan. was
There's
it
no
not?
ordinance, it's a resolution to adopt a strategic plan. And it was supposed to be implemented into the charter to institutionalize.
Patty, I cannot hear anything. It's fading in and out, so I don't think this is going to work for me. I'm not catching anything.
We can yell. You want to try speaking louder? No?
No, it's like I'm getting maybe every fourth word at best, and even that I've got this on maximum volume, and I'm still straining to hear anything. So I heard Patty very clearly when the speaker was over by her, but I can't hear anything really. I know Glenn was saying something, but I couldn't hear what it was. So
The email I sent out basically gave the references for the resolution adopted by the prior council to incorporate the strategic plan into the charter to institutionalize the process. So that's where I left it. Was the goal was to institutionalize a process to ensure for posterity that the strategic plan would become a living document and become a framework for how the city council framed its decisions and did its work in the future.
Well, I don't know if Joe can hear me or not. My feeling is we're at the 12th hour of getting this completed.
Hey guys, Jody just joined the meeting too.
Okay.
See if she can hear Patty, because I'm still. I heard what Glenn said about institutionalizing the charter, and I couldn't hear I couldn't hear what was said afterward. So.
My concern about trying to incorporate it into the charter is not a problem at the moment, but would be a problem because we've not gone over the strategic plan to be presented into the charter itself. In other words, we'd have to put the whole strategic plan in the charter, am I correct?
No, I don't believe that's true. It's just saying that basically the strategic plan becomes a framework for how the city council looks at future business, and it has to be reviewed once a year. It's not incorporating the entire strategic plan, even as it is, into the charter. It's just saying that the strategic plan will become part of the framework for how the city council does business in the future.
But is it a strategic plan or the strategic plan? That's my concern. What are we putting into the charter? And I haven't seen all of that, sorry. I remember the strategic plan, I've been to a few meetings, but I'm personally not familiar with what's in it. Now, I understand what you're saying, and I have no problem in putting it into the next election, but I need to see something that we're putting in here. We've been very specific on every item that's gone into the charter, and we've had some really good conversations, but I don't want to put something in there that I don't have in front of me.
Can I inject something? Sure. Glenn, do you have something in writing on paper that we can look at that basically shows what you would like inserted into the charter?
No?
Okay, so basically we would have to be writing this out. And how much time do we have left?
Today is it, isn't it?
Yeah, today's a vote.
That's kind of what I thought.
It's not that I'm opposed to it, Glenn. I just don't feel we have the time to go through it
Well,
in order to get it to the council for the April meeting.
right, and we did have a resolution to do this. However, it completely missed it
I did.
over the entire. Probably, hindsight is 20/20. We probably should have discussed that first, as to where it should go, and it should. I know how important it is to you. It's important to me too. But at the same time, the only way we're going to get this in is to stay here until we hash it out, or wait until the next time around. And that's what we're up against.
Glenn, would it be possible to include that, since we're going into a new budget season? Would that be sufficient? Because every council has got to go over and do the budget, and if we put that as a part of the budget, would we be able to do that instead of putting it in the charter?
Well, anything's possible. What I see is the prior council said, look, this is important. We need to put it in the charter to institutionalize the process. And the reason why they wanted to do that is because of exactly what's starting to happen now. It's like, okay, we'll take care of it later. And that was not the intent of when it was adopted. When it was adopted, it is, and the references are in the email, it's in the strategic plan, it's in the resolution that says it will be incorporated into the charter. So at this point, the question is it a priority to adopt into the charter, or is it? Because if it is, and it is a priority, then it's a matter of, okay, it goes on our 1A list, and within 24, 48 hours, you can have a rough saying, yes, this is how we will do it.
I don't think so. I mean, you never haven't seen what the strategic plan is.
It does
Can
not
I
matter what's in the
chime in?
strategic plan, it's that the strategic plan will become part of how the council does business. It doesn't say goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, goal 4. It says the strategic plan is a part of how the city council does
You
business.
may have got right to it. Instead of, we say 48 hours about, we'd have to review the entire strategic plan, try to incorporate it. You may have hit it right there to say that the strategic plan will be reviewed every year.
That's all it
To
is.
that effect. Yeah, maybe that's what we're getting
It's
to.
only like a 3 or 4 liner
Because we're
basically
assuming,
saying,
correct, we have
you know,
to incorporate the
yeah.
bulk into wording, and that's crazy.
exactly, it's not the specifics of the strategic plan, it's the process itself. The city council will use the strategic plan as a guideline, as a 5-year plan or something to be reviewed annually by the new council after the election and prior to the budget cycle.
If you change that to a strategic plan, I would support it, and I think we could hash it out. But when you say the strategic plan, that means it's specific.
The strategic plan says it's a living document that will be reviewed and updated annually.
No, I see where he's coming from. It's A, these very specific, but can you go backwards? I mean, you've got the topic, I got the city council will use a strategic plan to,
As a guideline for the execution of city business and decision-making, to be reviewed annually by the council after the new elections and prior to the budget cycle.
Glenn, that's why I mentioned to do it with the budget or before the budget as the budget starts, because we wouldn't necessarily have to review the charter every year, but it would send up a signal beginning of the budget season. This is something we need to talk to, including the budget, that, all right, let's make a decision now. We're doing the budget. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the charter and see if there's anything in it based on the new business and the experience we had last year and moving forward if we need to make any changes. Because you just said it in your statement, and I agree with it, you know, to do it before the budget cycle. That's why I kind of broke in and said, okay, why don't we include it in the budget cycle process?
I guess what I'm disappointed with is the captain and myself were not on council. With the number of council members that we have in this committee, that should have been brought up within the first 2, possibly 3 meetings. Here we're at the final time to wrap everything up, and this is being brought up. I don't like to be blindsided, and I feel that I'm being pushed to accept something that I'm not familiar with. Like I said, if you try to put it in the strategic plan, I would definitely say no, because I don't know what the strategic plan is. If you say a strategic plan, then it can be anything that you define in the future.
Several things are in play here. One, have you read the strategic plan?
No.
So, did you read the references that are provided in the email?
no, I did not, but I'll
the-
come back at you. It's like we talked this talk before with the representation, 2 versus 4. We
Most
decided on you to bring this forward. This is last minute.
of the
And right now, I'm
people,
going to say no.
most of the people who adopted that strategic plan aren't on the current council. So yes, it was kind of forgotten. And yes, it's 11th hour, but it's being raised because it's an important issue. Several things are in play here. The reason why it was supposed to be reviewed after elections is because when new council members come into play, they bring issues and perspective that the prior council didn't have. So a review of the strategic plan, there may be changes to the assumptions and the priorities of the goals of the city.
And
That's,
often they're in conflict. I mean, that's the.
exactly, and that's a natural evolutionary process, and that's accepted. The The hoop to be jumped through was prior to the budget cycle, because the purpose of the strategic plan is to align everybody's thinking on what are the priorities of the city. Therefore, when you spend $1 of the city budget, the goal is to make sure that it aligns completely with the strategic plan. Why would you spend money on goal number 6 when you've got line items in number 1 that haven't been filled? So, again, new people come to the council, that's their shot to take a look at it, and do you agree with the old assumptions? Do you agree with the goals and the priorities? And then we go to the budget cycle, once we have that, and say, okay, we're all thinking the same way, we've baselined our thinking, let's go through and prioritize the budget. What bubbles to the top and what sinks to the bottom?
Help me to understand, I don't, and then this is what I'm leaning on the representatives for. The resolution of a prior council, is that binding on the next council?
I defer to the city manager, I have to think it is.
It's a resolution that was adopted unless the city council would.
Folks, let me know when I can impart something to this conversation. I want to add something here on this. So just let me know. I can't hear you barely, so I don't know if someone's talking or not. So just somebody say, go ahead, and I'll speak.
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, so I think what I've heard, and it's again, I'm sorry, it's very, very choppy. Lynn, this is definitely technology that would not work to do a council meeting with, I can tell you that. I can barely hear it, and I have my volume cranked to the max, and I'm getting like maybe every other word. I don't know how it's going for Jody. I even changed phones, and it's still no better. Anyway, when the new council took office in last March, I brought up this very thing of there's 4 new people on council, and we should reaffirm the plan. And I was told, and I don't remember exactly who said it, but somebody said, no, we got to live with this thing. So we didn't do what was asked, and I did raise this to reaffirm this. So I think it's a good idea. That's why I brought it up to begin with. I think there has to be buy-in by the new council. And then the other thing is that in terms of the review, Marv, I think I heard you say something about do it during the budget cycle. We have our hands full as it is with the budget cycle. We have to either do it before or we have to do it afterwards. But during the budget cycle, there's just too much with the finance to be trying to, I think, redo or rethink the strategic plan. There's a lot in the strategic plan that has to be, looked at. We may say we've done some stuff. We may say there's more stuff we want to add. I just think that that's kind of a massive separate discussion. Probably should be done in advance. And if the new council swears it in March, it should be done in March and April, probably as one of the first items of business. That's what I proposed this year, so I'm totally in favor of it if that's what we want to do. We didn't with this year, and hence it wound up sitting at the wayside, and I don't like what happened.
So I'm looking at, basically, I've scanned through the entire charter, and the only way that we could insert this in cleanly and cheaply, if that is an option, would be to go put it right at the end of the charter, under a new section. If it's 3 lines, then it's something that we write down 3 lines right quick, we give it a number, and then we decide right here and now if we want to vote on it or not. And that's, I think that's really the only way to do this.
Yeah, there's also one other recommended area, 2.08 ordinances in general. I mean, that's kind of like how you're putting things out, so I would assume that any ordinances you put out would be in, right back to your topics, like, here's our priorities, so if we do an ordinance, it ties back to that strategic plan.
Or look at it, is there a section on the budget? Maybe that's where.
I looked at budget and considered that option also.
I'd like to address the 2 issues that the mayor raised. One is that resolution in the strategic plan was adopted at the 11th hour, 59th minute of the outgoing council. It was their last legacy to ensure that the process was institutionalized. There was a lot of soul searching and inertia involved in getting the strategic plan up and running. It was finally like, hey, this isn't a bad idea, let's move forward with it. the outgoing council said, yeah, this is good. We are going to make this our legacy. We're going to institutionalize this process, and they did it with a resolution. There was a movement and a lot of consternation by the residents who kind of saw the writing on the wall that there was going to be a huge changeover in the council, and they fought to stop the adoption of the strategic plan, basically saying, hey, you're doing that on your way out. We want to be the new guys on the block. We want to take charge of this. And they said, no, we've looked at it. We've had 3 years in office. We've looked at the process. This is the collective wisdom of the outgoing council. It's built into the process. If you want to change it, you can change it because you review it annually and you do that. When the question was asked by the new mayor coming in, whether or not you're stuck with it, the answer was based on, yes, we have a strategic plan and there is a way to review it annually and change it if it's needed. That answer may have been twisted or misinterpreted, but the strategic plan is subject to change in an annual review. The second thing is the main purpose, it's reviewed, and you can either do it right after the elections, but as a fail-safe, it should be reviewed no later than the beginning of the budget cycle, because that baselines the entire council again as to what are the priorities of the city. What are the goals of the strategic plan? Let's refresh our memories. What are the priorities? Therefore, when we start examining the budget, does the proposed budget align with the goals and the priorities of the strategic plan?
If a question on this one, what you're telling me is the prior council got the resolution approved to do the strategic plan. Am I correct?
To incorporate it. It was adopted.
But there was consternation, there was questions, and it was never really ratified by the new council.
Doesn't matter. There is no ratification process by...
So does the new council accept or reject the strategic plan that was previously approved through resolution?
We've had several work sessions, and it's a work in progress. It's like pulling teeth around here to try to get the council to sit down to review and validate it. We have done it once. We sat down and we went through all the goals, all the objectives, and everybody said, it's fine the way it
You
is.
see, you just validated my concern, and that is, this is something we should have started with at day one. At this point in time, you've actually convinced me not to do this because there are questions, and we need more time. Right now, at the rate we're going, we'll be lucky to finish in our time just with what we have in front of us. And you said you have another area you want to discuss as well. But if
Whoever's speaking, could you speak up louder? Because I cannot hear a word you're saying.
Yeah, I echo that. I can hear Jody loud and clear, and I can't hear a word you're saying, Stan.
I don't
sorry,
even know who's speaking.
do we need to identify ourselves when we speak?
Yeah, but you need to speak up louder. Like, I could hear Glenn because he was speaking louder. I could hear Marv because of his booming voice. And I hear Jody loud and clear and Patty, but like, I can't hear a word you're saying, Stan.
I think it's because
And the
of the
captain, I can't hear
distance of
you,
the
and
microphone.
Dave barely hearing you, so.
It's because you're not here.
And at some point, once you finish, Stan, I'd like to speak. I'd like to say something, please.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jody.
Well, I echo what Glenn is saying. I think this is something we have lost sight of. This is the strategic plan, because there's there's an ordinance, but it's not in our charter. There's no guidelines that we're going to continue this, and I don't know how a city operates without a strategic plan. That's why we have infrastructure failure. That's why we're not focusing on the things that are important to the city and to the residents, because no one has a roadmap to get those things done. And the reason is we're not reviewing it regularly. If it's written in our charter, it will be done. It's not going to get pushed to the back burner, and we put it on an agenda, and then the work session goes too long, and it gets kicked off the agenda. We can't keep going down this path.
Jody,
So I am in complete support of having this in our charter.
Jody, let me go back about 10, 15 years. The charter was not even an issue. It was buried we'll review it in 5 or 10 years. Well, I'm afraid if it's in the charter, it's gonna get buried again. I'd like to bring it out and make something that's on the budget. When we do the budget, just add another day to it, so the council reviewed it. I mean, I have an issue with this too. There's a lot of items that have been brought forth that got lost over the last 2 years. Lynn has done a good job bringing it up, but I think if it's in the charter, that's fine. If we can do it, that's fine. If we can't, let's at least do something to make sure we review the charter and review the strategic plan, definitely, to have the new council, whoever comes in, get them aligned, because that alignment has never happened prior. And I think Stan can agree with me. You know, we never really reviewed all the issues that Lynn had or the prior city manager had. The council came in kind of blind, not really reviewing what the direction was supposed to be for the coming year and what the past councils have done. So if you know, let's try something, one or the other, but something has to be done.
So I
Either
think, if I may, I think Dave came up with a good idea. If we can come up with a 2 or 3 line sentence that we can vote on, we can go forward. Does that sound practical?
I think it's a necessity.
Yep.
All right, well, let's try to do it in 2 places to make sure before the budget season starts, there's something in place that we review that strategic plan.
I'd recommend we only put it in one place in this document because of the talk we had before about how many changes affect the dollar sign and that. I mean, we'll get it in, but not in 2 places.
I think in section 803A, there should be something that you should include it in budget adoption.
Okay.
It's basically you must plan your budget around a strategic plan, which must be maintained and reviewed yearly.
Good idea.
Something to that extent. That way, you get it in there and it's cheap, and that there's at least, it's brought up that yes, this strategic plan will continue moving forward. And basically, it's up to future councils to determine whether they actually do anything with it. But at least it's there, and whatever we leave this council with at the end of our terms, there's something in place. And it basically once a year they have to review it. It just depends on how thorough they want to be with it, but I think that would be a good way to start it. And you're not aware of this, but basically we have gone through the strategic plan, and we prioritize where things are. It's basically safety, streets, basically how do we prioritize what we're supposed to do with the city?
I understand what a strategic plan
Right.
is, but when you say the strategic plan, that means it's already specified. If you say a strategic plan, it leaves to the council to adjust it accordingly. I think your idea of putting it under section 8 is good, but does it need its own paragraph, or should be amended?
I'm just trying to make sure we don't renumber.
Okay. Perhaps language, the city council will use the strategic plan as a guideline for the execution of city business and decision-making to be reviewed annually prior to the budget cycle.
Sounds good to me.
It's not specific about you must, 4 days part of the budget. It talks to a plan, not the strategic plan. And you said right into 803 as part of A, not a separate paragraph, just as part of A.
Yes.
Folks, I couldn't hear all the
hold on.
language. It's just making like a,
It's Abel here.
person who wants to make sure that this.
Yeah, right here.
that this gets,
You hear me now? Bad language.
I can hear you very clearly. Yeah,
Okay,
good.
great.
The language that I would suggest we do is to cover any new council, because you don't want, again, I'm very concerned that a prior council will bind a future council. It was my objection to this plan, not 85% of what's in it, but I like that a council, an outgoing council is binding a new council. So the way to get around that is you say, from the city council shall annually review the strategic plan during the period of April and concluding no later than June 1st. That takes us right to the budget season. It gives you a window of which to look at it. It's a couple-month window in case something comes up like what we have right now, and then we have a couple months to review it, and it gives everybody a chance to adjust it, adopt it, change it, whatever they want to do. But it'll cover any new incoming council, and it'll cover any existing council, and it forces an annual meeting on the topic. And that, I think, is what Glenn is going after, if I could hear all the words correctly.
So the words you're recommending are shall annually review a strategic plan 90 days prior to the budget cycle?
90, well, you said, let's say 90 days prior to June 1st. So let's see, that would be April, May, June. Yes, that would be, as long as you do April. The swearing in is typically middle of March on any new council. So this would stop an outgoing council from saying, yeah, we for you. No. The new council gets the crack at reviewing it. The old council has laid it out from the prior year. The new council then reviews it, and that gives you 3 months also, so it doesn't force us to do it. But as Glenn said, this thing's gotten pushed around, and we went a whole year and we didn't address it. There were presentations, but we never actually proposed any new language to it.
Zabel here again.
Mr. Ham.
Okay, shall annually review a strategic plan 90 days prior to April.
90 days prior to June 1st.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I would like to add that
no earlier than 90 days prior to June 1st. How's that? That covers you. No earlier.
Okay.
I would like to add that there is no a strategic plan. Whose strategic plan are we talking about? Are we talking about General Motors, Ford, AT&T? No, we are talking about the City of Bel Air Beach strategic plan.
That's fine, yeah.
City
That's
of
fine.
Bel Air Beach strategic plan shall be reviewed on an annual basis and updated by the new council prior to the budget cycle. There is no a strategic plan. That kind of infers you're going to sit down and go through the entire process of developing a
That
strategic.
it's a specific plan, and you're asking us to put in a charter a specific plan.
Because there is only one, the City of Bel Air Beach strategic plan, and as the strategic plan states, it will be reviewed on an annual basis and changed as necessary by the new council. I mean, okay, maybe I don't understand the nuances of the legal A versus the, but there is only one, the City of Bel Air Beach strategic plan. No, there is no a strategic plan. I don't think you want to go through this painful process annually of building a strategic plan. You don't want to do that. It's an iterative process, the foundations of which was laid several councils ago and said, this is our vision of what Bel Air Beach should look like, and as every council comes in, you get a shot at reviewing the assumptions. Obviously, things change, and you bring new perspectives to the council.
What I'm afraid of is the strategic plan that you're talking about, and this is where I need the city attorney. Basically, from now on, the charter says the strategic plan. That's it. End of story. Can't change it.
We only have the Constitution of the United States, so if we have a constitutional convention, are we going to review a constitution? No, we're going to review the Constitution of the United States, just like you would review the City of Bel Air Beach strategic plan. I guess I don't understand the ambiguity here.
Maybe I don't either.
Well, we have the charter, not a charter.
Just to comment.
Same process, basically.
May-
You start from where we're at, and then, just like this, and we're reviewing it now, only instead of every 10 years, we're reviewing that one once a year. And we start going forward, because currently, we're following that strategic plan. The way that we're setting our budget is based upon that, am I correct?
Yeah, and just to comment, I think maybe the wording should be, the city council will review the strategic plan annually and update it as required, not later than whatever date, 60 days prior to June 1st or something. So you're not saying that it's the same strategic plan. You're saying they will review it and update it.
As needed.
As needed.
As needed.
And that takes care of the whatever, the nuances. Because that's technically.
No, I
what
don't
they're
got
doing.
that. I mean, I'm listening, and now I'd like to go to the words if you're ready for it.
Pardon?
I was kind of listening to your general ideas. I wasn't verbatim listening for each word, but if the chair feels comfortable with that, where you can go over it again so I catch that.
Okay. All I said was the strategic plan will be reviewed and updated annually. And I think the mayor's comment was 60 days prior to June 1st or 90 days.
90 days.
90.
Or you review the current version of the City of Bel Air Beach strategic plan.
It's assumed to be you're already reviewing the plan.
I add something here. Glenn, again, this is so difficult doing this. I can't see you. I don't know what you're saying here, but in terms of the strategic plan, let's understand something. Although it was the vision of the past council, and it may be 100% the vision of this council and the next council, a future council may come in and take that strategic plan and just blow it up. Okay? And they're not bound by it. Okay? Just because that was the vision of the past council, we've talked often about the vision of the past council that we don't all agree with. So somebody could run on a new program and say, this isn't what we stand for. Now, I happen to think the strategic plan is really good, and I happen to think it's really well thought out. So I can't see that would be beneficial to the city. But, I mean, if this United States, there's people running on whole different systems of economics.
But nobody,
like that. So,
no one has a problem with that. If the new council comes in and says, absolutely,
Okay.
this is not our priorities,
Okay.
you can change it, but you have a strategic plan in place that says you will use these goals, these prioritized goals based on these assumptions to make your business decisions. Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Two councils from
I
now,
agree,
they
Glenn.
may have a completely
And it
different
has to be
outcome.
done prior to the budget because it governs everything we're going to do in the future year. I mean, if we decide to end the flooding problem, which is a major thing, that impacts all the capital spending. So yeah, let's put that window in, and it's the existing, word it however you want, but the existing strategic plan that's in place. I mean, you're not starting a new one, you're starting with that one, and you can blow it up, you can adopt it, you can do whatever you want, but you're going to start with that one. You're not reinventing the wheel. That's where I see it.
And at the end of the day, you still have a City of Bel Air Beach strategic plan. It may be immensely different than what you started with, but the city has a
Yes.
guideline for making business decisions. I think we're in violent
Yeah, agreed.
agreement to what we're trying to say.
Mike, would you please read what we have?
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the latest revision. The strategic plan, and I put this myself, shall be reviewed. Hold on. I'm moving over, Joe, hold on.
Good idea.
Okay, Jody, you got me? Okay.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, the strategic plan shall be reviewed and updated annually, no earlier than 90 days prior to June 1st.
Perfect.
Now, where that would be,
Well, to go to Glenn's comment, just say the Bel Air Beach strategic plan. I mean, not that anybody would argue that we're doing, Largos, but I mean, we've consistent
Okay.
without any backdoor, things.
Roger.
Strategic plan.
And then where that would be inserted is section 8.03, budget adoption. There's paragraph A, adoption. It would be inserted right there. It's part of that paragraph. It's not a new paragraph. It just added to the end of that.
Yeah, that works.
Consensus, gentlemen?
I think one more thing needs to be added in there. We basically said it needs to be reviewed and when, but we haven't said why. And the why is because the council is supposed to use that as a framework for...
Glenn, you're winning the argument.
No, I understand it, but what I'm saying is, we said the how and the when, now let's just tell them the why. You haven't said, do we need to say that the city basically needs to use that as a framework for making its business?
I don't
It's not
think
part
so.
of the charter.
Yeah, we don't say that anywhere in the charter.
Good.
Okay, let me get the right, okay, so again, 8.03 is part of paragraph A.
Hey,
Again, the Bel Air Beach strategic plan shall be reviewed and updated annually, no earlier than 90 days prior to June 1st.
consensus?
I'm good.
Dave?
And that's the very last line in this paragraph?
Yes, that'd be part of that paragraph. That's the last line.
Glenn, are you happy with that?
Can you read that to me one more time?
Okay, you guys can hear, I gotta go over here. Okay. The hell is,
Or
oh, I'm getting a chair there, Joe, hold on.
stay 6 feet away from the mic.
My recommendation is spider phone people. Okay. I'm at section 8.03, budget adoption, paragraph A. I'm going to read the last sentence. This temporary monthly budget shall continue until such time as council adopts a new budget, period. The Bel Air Beach strategic plan shall be reviewed and updated annually, no earlier than 90 days prior to June 1st, period.
Okay, what's missing in that is tying the budget.
I think that's good. I like it.
Is basing the budget around that. Does it matter?
I believe it is. That's the point I was trying to bring up. Why are you doing this? You're doing this
Well, it
because you
doesn't
want
need
time-
to be at the end, is the problem. It needs to, basically shall adopt an annual budget that's somehow based upon, that follows the strategic plan. Then at the bottom, you have the sentence about actually reviewing the strategic plan. So, okay, it's saying that the council shall adopt an annual budget for the city by ordinance before October 1st of each year. Shall adopt an annual budget, something that follows the guidelines of the strategic plan, or something to that effect.
Based upon the strategic plan?
Because right now, what you're doing is you're just throwing a line in there that says, we'll review a strategic plan, but it doesn't say anything about tying the budget to the strategic plan. And that's the problem.
That's the point I was trying to make, the why you need to do this, because you want to tie the budget build to the priorities and goals set forth in the reviewed strategic plan. That's connecting the dots.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will defer. I don't know if Fred is in this meeting or not. I would defer to Fred, but just as an attorney, my comment is you're getting very specific and you're starting to condition a review upon an action. And the problem is this, okay? You get done with the budget process and somebody makes the claim, well, you guys didn't, or you ladies and gentlemen did not review, and this budget doesn't reflect what's in the charter, what's reflected in the strategic plan. Now you got charter violations, and now you got potential ethic violations, recall violations, and everything else. We're getting too specific. You want to review it annually to see if it's still a valid plan or to adopt it, to update it. We can put that in there separately. But I think if we start tying the one to the other thing, that is subject to so much interpretation. You know, how do you know if we did it in relation to it? One guy's going to want to pave every street in the city, and the next person on council will say, nah, we only have to do 2 streets. So it's too hard to quantify that.
Hey, one of the problems that I'm having with this also is that basically committing us to an awful lot. I mean, we're talking full-time job meetings here to review the strategic plan and have that completely wrapped up, and then go right into the budget also. I'm almost wondering if this shouldn't break out into more of a committee or something to lighten the load, because I know not everybody here works, but I do, and this is a very.
And Dave,
yes, sir.
Dave, to your point, look at what's going through right now this year. I mean, we're going to be, Lynn, we're going to be talking about, greatly reduced council session for another month or so here until this virus clears, right?
Yep.
We hope it clears. We wouldn't be bound by this. It's in our charter, So we still have to be meeting on this stuff. Because if we were saying we're going to review it, by God, you got to review it. You don't have it all an out. So I like the idea of saying we're going to do it annually. I do. But let's just, changes can happen at any time, is my understanding. But I think this just forces people to take a look at it, and I do like that idea that we take a look at it before we begin the budget process. But maybe, I don't know if we can commit to a full overhaul with everything else we have with the city either. You don't need a full overhaul; you just need tweaks, really. But
The analogy of utilizing the strategic plan as a guideline for the budget process is because it's a sanity check for the budget process to make sure that it's in alignment with the direction that the city wants to set. You tie it loosely as a guideline, very similar to the way we did with using Robert's Rules of Orders as a guideline for the conduct of our meetings. We don't want to use Robert's Rules of Orders as a process, and you're the one who clarified that for us. So what we did was we loosened up the reins and said we will use Robert's Rules as a guideline. Well, very similarly we do with the strategic plan. It's reviewed on an annual basis, changes are made accordingly, and we use that as a guideline. It doesn't mean that we are bound to the exact priorities of it. There may be some very good subjective reasons why the council decides to go with item X versus item A on the priority list, because there's some subjective reason for it. But it's still.
Well, I agree with that. That's good. I mean, that was my language for the Roberts, and I think you could use the same thing here. You're using it as a guideline. We're not to stray from it, but hey, the guideline in the strategic plan says, we're supposed to handle safety and security of the city. Well, okay, we want to have safety by eliminating flooding. Well, we can't eliminate all the flooding in 1 year because we don't have the money. So we're using it as a guideline. We've got, $800,000 and we're going to fix 6 streets. And, I'm fine with that. That right, the way you just said it, and then there's, folks, but that seems good to me.
Well, I don't want, right now we spent 45 minutes on this one subject, and I'm hoping we can wrap up everything else before the end of the meeting. So let's come to a conclusion at this point. I think that Joe's point is taken. If we tie it too closely, I think the city attorney is going to take it apart. I'm willing to go with you to put the term, the strategic plan of Bel Air Beach, or Bel Air Beach strategic plan must be reviewed prior to 90 days prior to June 1st. But I don't understand what you're trying to add to it.
Well, it falls in budget for no reason whatsoever. It says adoption, and it's talking all about the budget, and then there's this wild sentence at the end that really doesn't say what
It's in the wrong place.
It's in the wrong place, and basically there should be a section for a strategic plan.
How about 12, putting the terminology you have here in its own separate section? And you don't have to tie it to the budget. Strategic plan is part of the budget, is it not?
It's the foundation, it's one of the foundations for the budget. The issue here is why we're not seeing the linkage is precisely why we didn't have a strategic plan beforehand. was because we need a strategic plan to set the priorities of the city, and then everybody is baselined on those priorities, and before you sign off on the budget, you make sure that the spending of an obligation of the money is based on those priorities set by
But
the
the
council.
strategic plan is not 100% budget, is it? There's other things involved with the strategic plan. Am I correct?
It's a guideline to trickle down
It's a
to the
guideline
budget.
for every decision the council should make.
It can include budget.
If you're talking ordinances, what does the strategic plan say with respect to what is more important? The aesthetics? I'll get to the aesthetics or public safety. You can use it for making those decisions. When it comes to obligating and spending the city's budget, which is more important? Spending money on a public safety issue or an aesthetics issue? It forms the basis for every decision we make. We should stop for a minute and say, does that make sense, and is that decision in alignment with the priorities we have set in our strategic plan? And if not, you should have a very compelling and logical argument for why you're going to deviate from those priorities set in the strategic plan.
But all I'm trying to say is, if you want a strategic plan, and if you want to include it in the charter, then it should be brief. It should say exactly what the captain just read out, and it should be its own private section. You do not have to have it under the budget area, because I agree with Joe, you put it in there and you're going to be confusing somebody, as it's going to become ambiguous.
Yeah, no, I was going along with incorporation into 8.03, I think, to streamline it, because if you can just connect the dots saying that the budget utilizes the City of Bel Air Beach's strategic plan as a guideline. It's reviewed annually and changed accordingly. I can live with that. If you really want to do this correctly, you would say the City of Bel Air Beach has a strategic plan, and it is the guideline for how we make decisions, and it's used as a guideline.
I would like to make a motion on this. Can you hear me?
Not really.
Okay, how about now?
No.
How about now?
That's great.
Okay, great. I'd like to make a motion that basically we tabled this one, we finish what we started. I give Glenn time to get with the attorney and formulate what he would like inserted into this pertaining to the strategic plan, and we go ahead and schedule one more meeting within a week and wrap this up and be done with it.
Perhaps the 25th, which is next Wednesday.
Because we're going to be here all night hashing this out, and we still have a whole list of priorities, and this part is not even written. It's something brand new. So that's my motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Dave.
All in favor? Okay. Thank you.
Motion passes.
Okay.
I have that for action. I will rough out something, and I anticipate I can give you several different versions. If you want a standalone, if you want to incorporate it into the budget process, I will give you several different variations of it, and I will submit it to the chair, and he can distribute it.
After tonight, we should be complete unless we're planning on another meeting.
Did we just miss something? I thought that
We just voted on it.
We just voted on
a
it.
meeting in a week to wrap this up.
Okay. I missed it.
You raised your hand.
I apologize. I've got some serious issues.
I understand.
Yeah, that's the 25th, it's a Wednesday.
Did everyone go away?
I'm here. I hear you, Joey. you and I can talk. That's all we hear.
You hear me sighing?
Same time,
No, I'm
5:30?
glad we tested this because this definitely would not work for a council meeting. There's no way we could run a council meeting like this, so that idea needs work.
So we need a true conference calling mechanism, the second part.
Yeah, and we're gonna need it fast, the way things are closing.
So Wednesday,
Is anybody
March
still there or did they
25th?
go home?
Yeah, that's the
think we lost them.
next week.
I don't know if they're there.
5:30 again, is that correct?
That's what we just put down, yeah.
I would like to see, not multiple choices, I would like to see something that you write out and the attorney scrubs it and you approve of it and you present it to us and we come in here and in 10 minutes we vote this thing through and we're done with it. How do you feel about that?
I can
I
get
just don't like, I thought we were at the end of this and I didn't.
I thought we were
realize
too.
it was hindsight and we're adding stuff to it. Because at this rate, 10 minutes is fine, but I'm not going into a protracted meeting for the next one. We need to be finished by next Wednesday.
We're running out of time.
We are out of time, as far as I'm concerned. So we will have, present the verbiage and we'll vote on it the next meeting on Wednesday.
Is the consensus for a standalone?
That's my opinion.
Yes.
Okay,
Agree with Chair.
Stanley.
I have that. I have it for action.
And squared by the attorney?
I'll work with the city manager to scrub it through the attorney.
It will actually require 2 votes because it will also have to be injected into the priorities. We will establish priorities tonight, right?
That's what we're supposed to do.
That's right. And so then we'll have to vote to see where that reigns in our order of priorities, if it's at the top of the page. I'm just trying to find some way to streamline this meeting so that we're not arguing over something that's not written yet.
Would it also be possible to have like a one-page summary of the priorities, 1As, 1Bs, 2s, and 3s? So we can just look at one page rather
That's
than go
something Patty would be able to do for us. Am I correct, Patty?
Yeah, it's in the minutes like that from Mr. Sable's notes. It's in the minutes. It's actually 2 pages, I guess. Do you see what I'm saying? Page 2 and 3?
Yes.
Would you just want to squeeze on to one page maybe? Or,
No, just a one-pager with the priority 1As,
Yes.
the 1Bs, 2s, and 3s, and just the title of it and maybe a 2 or 3 sentence description of
yeah,
what.
that's what's in there now. But what I'm saying is it's in the minutes now, but it's on like 2 and 1/3 pages.
I'm sorry, I don't have a copy of the minutes.
It's the
Yeah, it's
email out.
1As,
Email.
1Bs. Here's one right here. She's got, yeah. It's
Okay.
nice, yeah, just she laid it right out.
My bad, that's what I needed. Thank you.
Yeah, look at that.
You're not going to break it down to one page, but this is much.
No, that's what I need. I just.
22 pages.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay. I guess we start back again. Let's take a look at this. Are there any has everybody looked at the changes that we made, that we approved last time?
Yes.
Any suggestions, changes, adjustments, amendments? Because I didn't see, I think we pretty well captured in here everything that we were talking about.
Section 901A, it doesn't have a prioritization number on it. That's what goes up. attorney. Recommended changes. And it looks like section 11 too.
Lynn, did the attorney ever find, one of the questions was, on the very first one, where we had 801 was the section number, and it's 601, can that be simplified, or does it have to be spelled out?
Well, I spoke to Fred about a couple of these, and we've tried to look through to see if it was a typo but we haven't found anything that says it's a typo.
So it's got to be correct.
So he's telling me, when I talked to him last week, he told me that it had to be corrected. Every document, when they've done the review or updated it, it says, everything we found that Patty's looked for, it says 801. Although it's not 801.
But you're talking about, we were talking about section 901 alpha.
I know we talked about it, but it's not in the minutes.
We had, we never got a response from the attorney about the election and deferred to city attorney regarding question dates. Yeah, this was a low point. This is 9.01.
We didn't prioritize 901A?
No, because we never had an answer from the attorney. Right now, we have not changed it.
Well, since we have a meeting coming up on next week, Lynn, can you ask him specifically on that?
Talking about 901.
I've heard the city attorney, we know him, we need to address it at all. So basically, as far as this committee is concerned, we are now finished with our documents, except for what the city attorney has to give us. And we have one question that will be answered next Wednesday by voting on the strategic committee provision, the strategic plan. Are there any other changes, adjustments?
I have none.
Joe, I know you can't hear me, but do you have any changes?
What are we talking about? The priorities?
No,
Any
anything-
changes,
Any
period.
changes?
Oh, no, I think we're fine, and, yeah,
And we can't hear what you're saying, what you're changing, so.
yeah.
We're asking if there was any changes to what's we have written.
Section
I don't know how to answer that
1.02,
because I didn't hear what you have written.
No, it's, after the last meeting that we had, do you have any input to any of the items? Any suggestions, changes, amendments, et cetera?
No.
Okay.
And also no for me. And our priorities, Glenn, it's not going to help you because I'm here, but I showed you a list that I had there, and I've color-coded the list so I could look at it real quickly and see which one they currently rank in, and then we have to discuss where they'll ultimately, finish, so.
There's one recommendation I do. It's you set on promotion boards, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We do the confidence factors, like, look, 90%, we're good. Make the recommendation that everything with a priority 1A approved.
can I just, I'm trying to understand, all of the 4-point X's, are those going to be incorporated into one item?
The 4-point.
Section
That's up
4
to the
point,
attorney if we can get away with it.
X's to
That would be
01,
preferred. I think he
02,
was leaning
03.
towards no.
That's going to be just one item, 1A, right?
I don't think that's that's how it works. I think every one of them is a line item. Are they supposed to work together?
Yeah, so my question is, I've got two questions. All references to the treasurer, were those going to be
One,
a
That was a
specific?
city attorney question.
Okay, so we don't have an answer to that. And also the Scrivener's error in
Yeah, no
1.02,
no answer.
he hasn't answered that one either?
He said if we don't find something in a previous charter, that was modified, that we would have to vote to change it. And Patty has researched facts and charters, and we have not found the one that says 601. Because if it did,
You
I'm
can
sure
say-
this was never voted on. If we found 601, then I'm sure it could be considered a Scrivener's error, and
Anywhere where we're omitting city treasurer, Fred did not have a comment on that.
he knows about it, and I asked him about it, and he's supposed to be getting us an answer.
Yeah, the problem with that is it's
Adds
going to be a
expectation.
very long ticket item on the ballot. If you try to compile it into one, and I'm almost certain you could do that.
The next one.
I just don't know if,
Legally, can we do it?
right.
No, but I'm with you. That was the question you're supposed to answer 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
wasn't it brought up by Jody that the city of Clearwater did it?
Well, that's somebody
Combined-
else, but
They
yeah,
combined a lot of
not our
things.
attorney.
Well, as far as this goes, we know what we're submitting, and then it's up to the council to decide whether they want to approve this or not, and then send it on. Once it goes to the Board of Elections for submission onto the ballot, that's whenever we'll have clarification for sure. Do you agree?
Yes.
It makes so much sense to just one thing.
To us, it makes sense. I don't know if we can do it legally. But if we can, then we can add a lot of our stuff and get it done on the first ballot.
With
If not,
respect to section 1.02, the Scrivener's error, 601, what's the downside if you didn't do it? If somebody contested the boundaries of the city, the county has all that
The
stuff.
record's there, and it says 601.
So, I mean,
we were just trying to correct an error, but he's got a good point. Instead of wasting time on the damn ballot, leave it alone.
catch it later, make it a priority 2 or 3, and catch it when you have the time.
Put a note somewhere in our records later on.
Yeah, my research found it at 601. I looked at 801 and it was 20-some properties. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not right. And then I found something else that it was a city.
Well, we're on record now knowing that it's an error.
Yeah.
But do we have to spend the money to advertise it, to vote on it, to someone who's gonna say they don't care?
I guess I would look at it, it's not a priority, but at some point in time, it needs to be corrected. However, it needs to be corrected.
But if we have all these changes right now,
You could put it on a second priority.
Yeah,
or do it in 5 years.
let's move it down, and we'll find whenever we're not submitting a bunch of changes, and slip one in this week.
But again, go back to the city attorney. If he had told us in advance, we could answer that question tonight. So he's got to have an answer for us by next Wednesday.
Well, I'll make it blatantly clear.
I would make a recommendation that in place of that one, we use that as a placeholder for the strategic plan, subject to the approval of this body, but use that as a placeholder and as a count. So I basically see, 4 or 5 items, depending on how we handle that section 4.XX.
Well, that's going to be the key, because you're looking at something this big right now, it could be collapsed down to here, then we can do all of our 1As and 1Bs. Very simple. Okay.
I'm good with that. I'm good with this order, and
So Lynn, can you explain to him our dilemma here?
First thing in the morning,
Thank you. As well,
or I'll wake you up tonight.
that's their call. So if there's no other changes, no other adjustments, and you have that changing Scrivener errors to a 3, correct?
Change that right now, go to priority 3.
That's the only thing we don't need to vote on that, do we? Well,
You need to
we have
vote on the
consensus.
priorities. Yeah.
Is there a
3.
consensus to move it to a 3?
3.
The Scrivener's error.
Agree with that? 3?
I'm fine with that.
All approved.
Aye.
Consensus is positive.
Somebody want to explain that to Joe? And Jody?
Hey, Joe, Jody?
Hello?
Hey, real briefly,
Yes.
we just had a consensus vote here, but we'll wait for your input. Under section 1.02, this is the Scrivener's error.
Right.
The floor was just saying, take that priority 1A, move it down to a 3.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell them why.
The reason why is, first of all, nobody's hit us on it. That's the obvious thing. And 2, we're looking at more pressing, I guess the term would be, changes.
Yes.
1 is, if we have to list this in error, we'll just move it down because we got more pressing items.
Yeah, I would prefer to stick to
That sounds good to me. I mean, I don't see an issue with that as long as we just get it on the ballot at some point in time and get it corrected.
Yeah. Joe?
Captain, the only issue I had with that was, in terms of, is somebody going to sit here and challenge that we have an invalid charter? Probably not. But it's really wrong. I mean, we're really referencing some other cities, or God knows, we could be referencing some guy's house on that reference, on that, on that deed, so, and that recording. So the question, I guess, for our attorney was, how important is this, okay? It can be a 3, it can be a 1. I mean, if somebody says, hey, you got completely, you're talking about an entity that doesn't exist here, then we got a mess, and that's why we might want to correct it immediately. I agree. I mean, if it wasn't that we did this, we would have never even noticed it. No one noticed it since 1959.
For my time.
But Joe, at the same point, if it's a minor error, we're aware of it, we want to get it fixed, but in place of other things that are more important to get onto the ballot based on the size, cost to the city to put it on a ballot, it's not as important to fix it immediately as it may on the next election.
I recognize the legal perspective on this, but I would say let's apply a little risk management to this thing. And that is,
Let's say that after my day.
yeah, again, let's throw this in the balance. It hasn't been an issue yet. Even if it did become an issue, somebody could say, well, let's go to the county for the thumbs up, thumbs down rules committee on this thing. And the county's going to come back and say, well, you're in the wrong book. That's why you should be in 601 instead of 801. So, I mean, if we throw this in the scales of risk management, where does it weigh? I don't think it's a 1A.
And Glenn, I mean, using the rules of contract construction, okay, there's something like this that is it's a mutual mistake. It's an error that a judge would see. It should have been 601. We wrote 801. I don't think we would have somebody saying, hey, you have a completely invalid city boundaries, completely invalid city charter. If worse came to worse, a judge is going to interpret this, and he's going to interpret it to exactly what we were saying it's going to be. So it probably can be dropped to a 3. We just wanted to get that officially from Fred, but my feeling is it probably can and should be, pushed off, but it has to be corrected. I'm with Jody. We can't let this one slide. I mean, it's got to get done at some future election.
I agree, but not this one.
Put it on the strategic plan.
Put it off March with all the others.
Well, if
So you
we
want
get
to
the
move to number
attorney to
3,
answer
is
the
that-
question, the
Yes.
sooner he answers the question, the sooner we can make the decision.
Right.
Lynn said he would call him either this evening or tomorrow morning and let him know that the ball is in his court.
That's the first thing you said, Stan, that I could understand. Keep talking in that voice, nice and loud. That's great.
I'm yelling louder, that's all.
Keep yelling.
All right. I think we're at the end of this. Everything else will be fixed next Wednesday. I'll entertain a motion.
Are we, before we conclude, are we voting to only do the 1As or the 1As and 1Bs?
We're back, we can't answer that. We don't have the city attorney telling us how big this thing is going to be and how much paper it's going to take up. We can't answer that one tonight.
Okay, all right, I'm good with that.
Are we clear on what we're asking from the city attorney? It's our consensus that we want to combine all references to the treasurer. The 1A will be to delete the description of duties for the treasurer and all other sections that include the term treasurer.
I'm with you. I expected the city attorney to be here tonight to answer that directly.
No, I guess what I'm saying is telling him what we want, and if he disagrees, then to tell us why we can't. Not just, hey, what's your opinion on this?
But along with that, in addition to what you're asking is, okay, if this is the way it's going to be, how much space are we talking about on a ballot, and what will that cost us?
Then, I think the bigger question is, as Fred has said, he recommended no more than 3 or 4 items. And
But
maybe
that's
5.
irrelevant based on what Glenn just said.
So your 1As right now are 5 or 6.
Well, if we,
Depending.
if we're able to condense all of the 4s into one,
Then you have 4 or 5.
well, even 405 is an oddball.
Right.
That's,
But the one-
okay, well, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, and possibly 6.
So I think you're basically saying, city attorney, the 1As are a priority. Is that what I'm hearing to tell him?
And then to give him a heads up that Glenn's going to be,
Right.
Okay, so we have our 1As, yes, are our priority, no question.
Did you
But
vote
if
on
we
that?
can shrink it down to a reasonable 2-pager, all of those, then we go to 1Bs.
well,
No.
even on, if we shrink this down as small as we can, we're still looking at 6 entries.
You
On
don't
6,
go much
6,
more.
You're counting the scrivener's error?
No.
no, but I'm counting potentially 1 more. It's 5 as it stands right now, 2, 3. If you condense these down into 1, that's 4, and then 5 is the one that's reserved.
5.
Is that what I'm hearing?
I see 5, yeah.
5 of them.
Yep.
Yeah, and Clearwater, I think Clearwater just had 6, if I'm not mistaken, 5 or 6. So, I mean, I know Fred said 3, but Clearwater just did 5 or 6 last night, and it was fine, it worked.
Well, that's your Mayor, that's your 1As right now. You have 5 or 6.
Right.
And at worst, you've got 9, I believe.
Yeah, and I think you get too big.
8. 6 or 8.
I think this is doable if we contain it to 1As, and we're kind of innovative on how we wordsmith it.
Consensus to do just 1As.
I think that's,
I agree.
Well, if we're able to move the Scrivener's error, which is 1.02, if we move that to number 3, that drops out. If all the Article 4 changes for 1, 2, 3, and 5 all become one item, we'd have 2.02A, all the 4s, 2.045A, and 2.06B. Those would all be 1A priorities, and that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 only. So you even could bring the 2 1B items in and only have 6, which would be 2.01A and 5.03A. So you could get, if we're able to combine all those 4, and that's the key, if 4, 1, 3, and 5 with the treasurer all can combine, you could conceivably just get all your 1As and Bs done, and then leave the 2s and 3s for future.
if there's room, there's room. If there's room for 1Bs, we get it done. If not,
We use
the
1As
goal
to-
the goal is the 1As, definitely, and if there's room, we pick up as many 1Bs as we can.
I agree.
And also, I think one of the things that should be, whenever this is submitted to the council, I think that we should, the council should be able to see what the cost of this is. And, you know what I'm saying, as much details as possible. What's the cost, what's it gonna look like on a ballot, those sorts of things. It's not something that we can do, but unfortunately I have to dump that one off on Patty to contact the Board of Elections and figure all that out.
But in conjunction with that, before Patty can do it, doesn't the attorney have to write this up?
Yes.
And he's gonna do that by Wednesday, because we have to present this to the council, and we have to vote on.
Yeah, the presentation's on the 30th.
He's not gonna get the language written for the ballot. But that could probably take you 2 or 3 weeks, probably, I don't know.
We said 2 weeks before, if we're looking another week, that's 3.
Well, what I'm saying is, whatever you want to put on the ballot, that's what this group is recommending to the city council. The city council will say, this is what we want on the ballot, okay?
Well, okay, so here's, we know section 202, absolutely, we want it. 2045, we want it. 206, we want it. We want a condensed version of all the fours, and at worst case, an additional 405. Beyond, I mean, we can hand this over to him now and say, write this the way that it should be written and get started, so that whenever we come back next week, we've got a draft of this. Do you think that that's reasonable?
I'll talk to Fred.
I mean, we've got to be close.
I don't think so.
Yeah, let's work some of these issues in parallel instead of
Right.
sequentially.
Yeah, we'll give him, what I'm going to tell him to focus on is the 1As, and you're going to give us the other. Is that the consensus?
That is consensus.
Yes.
Okay.
What?
Is that the consensus of everyone?
I don't know about,
Gotta go to the talk box.
Jody,
Yeah.
we're looking for the consensus. Everybody here agrees that right now we want to conclude everything if possible on Wednesday, the 25th. But we need the city attorney to go ahead and give us his opinion on 2 items and give us an idea as to how much verbiage can be put onto the ballot. Are we strictly at the 1As with the 5 or 6 that we have, or can we possibly include 1Bs as well? That's something he has to tell us.
Well, he also has to submit the
I
appropriate.
agree, Stan. That's exactly what I said before. We're really dependent upon him, and he has to. Until we get that answer, we can't prioritize the stuff that we have left over here, because I don't think anybody's really at this stage. I couldn't hear any of the discussion, but it doesn't seem like people are arguing what should be in the 1As, the 1Bs, the 3s, the 2s.
No.
I think we pretty much are in agreement with that, with the exception maybe of moving the scrivener's error. Other than that, I think everybody's in pretty, we pretty much prioritize. But it's so critical if we need to if we need to burn 4 questions because of treasurer, that does limit us then.
Yes. And remember, by the time of next week, we've got to present this to council.
Stan, you're likely, and I don't, since there's council here, Lynn and I have been talking extensively, you're likely going to have some additional time. I don't know that we're going to be doing a regular council meeting, particularly if this is the way our back and forth goes over here with it. We can't telephonically do this, so the council's going to be meeting on Monday to discuss when the next meeting's going to be, and we'll have a better idea. It may not be the regular first Monday, so that's
Understood.
a question mark at this point. So you may have some extra time.
Okay. These meetings are so much fun, I don't mind another one.
I would agree. I don't know how we move forward. I don't know how we move forward without some advice from the attorney
Yeah.
and getting what can go on the ballot and he needs to be involved now. I mean, he, you know, I know this was a tough meeting probably for everyone to attend, but he needs to be involved from here on out, to, you know, kind of guiding us.
Okay.
So as I understand it, Lynn's going to take all this to Fred for us to have some feedback, or how is that going to proceed?
Hopefully I'll hear from him by tomorrow, at least touch base. Lynn's going to talk to him first. Any other questions?
Okay.
And in Fred's defense, I know, because I've been talking with him quite a bit with this whole, you know, virus thing and what we're supposed to be doing as a city. Lynn has too. He's had a pretty much on a lot on his plate with Haines City. There was a bunch of emergent stuff that he had to tend to. So if we can get to him, I do think we need his input. I agree with Jody and everyone else. We need to know so we can finalize the priorities here. But I think we're really close on this. And, you know, don't be too worried about having it ready for April 3rd or whenever our meeting was scheduled, because that may very well be sliding after Monday, given what's going on here.
Okay. In that case, I'll entertain the motion. Oh, I'm sorry, Lynn?
Just refresh my memory, at one time it was raised about the number of council members, the idea of going from 7 to 5, and I'm not asking for debate or more discussion, I'm just trying to say, I missed a meeting and what was the consensus on that? Did that fall off the table?
I thought we left it the same.
Yeah, we voted right there.
Okay.
No change.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.